Here are 4 disturbing true school horror stories shared by viewers. Each one takes place in a place that's supposed to feel safe, but sometimes the scariest things happen in the places you least expect. Sit back and let's get into it. Freshman year, I moved into a small university in West Virginia. It wasn't my dream school, but it was cheap, close enough to home, and during the pandemic, it felt like the safest option. Classes were a mess that year, half online, half in person, with dorms only half filled. When I moved in, my building was quiet. Too quiet. It was the kind of silence where you could hear a cough 2 floors down or footsteps echoing through the stairwell at night. My roommate was already there when I arrived. She introduced herself quickly, not really looking me in the eyes. She wasn't rude, just distant. Polite, quiet, but often a way I couldn't pin down. The first thing I noticed about her was the bottles. A whole line of prescription bottles on her desk, each with her name on the label. She caught me staring and muttered something about skin meds and shut the drawer. I didn't think much of it. Everyone has their quirks. We weren't close, but we coexisted fine. She spent most nights with her boyfriend off campus. I went home on weekends. For the most part, the room was mine alone. That's when it started. The first Monday back from a weekend at home, I dropped my bag and collapsed onto my bed. It was 6 a.m. and still dark outside. I didn't even change clothes, just pulled the blanket over me. That's when I felt it. The dip. The mattress sinking at the corner as if someone had leaned on it. I opened my eyes immediately. No one. My roommate was turned toward the wall, breathing slow and steady. I told myself I was imagining things. I was half asleep after all, but a week later it happened again. Same routine. Home for the weekend, back by dawn. The dorm halls felt heavier that morning, like the air was thicker. I crawled into bed, trying not to wake her. Minutes later, the bed sagged. But this time, the weight stayed, pressing down harder. Like someone had sat on it, my heart raced. I froze under the blanket. The air felt colder, then the mattress jolted. Like something heavy had jumped off. I shot upright, breathing hard, staring at my roommate's bed. She was still there, facing the wall. She hadn't moved. I didn't sleep that night. The third Monday, I almost didn't go back. But I had a test that morning. I told myself the stress was making me imagine things. Hallucinations, sleep paralysis, something rational. I got in around 5 a.m. The dorm building was dead silent. Not even the hum of the vending machine down the hall. When I opened the room door, I swear I smelled something sour. Like mildew or old sweat. But I brushed it off and climbed into bed. I lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting. Minutes ticked by. Nothing. Then, slow as a breath, the bed dipped. Closer this time, near my shoulder. I shut my eyes, pretending to sleep. The weight shifted, and then cold fingers brushed my neck, not grabbing, not scratching, just resting, my body locked. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream, and then just as suddenly it was gone. The bed lightened. The air felt warm again. I snapped upright, gasping. My roommate stirred, rolling onto her back. Her eyes opened halfway, but she wasn't looking at me. She was staring above me, her pupils wide, her face pale, like she was watching something I couldn't see. That was the last night I stayed in that room. I packed my things and requested a transfer the next morning. The RA didn't even ask questions. She just handed me a new key. Later that week, I ran into a girl at the cafeteria. She noticed I was carrying boxes and asked if I'd switched dorms. When I told her who my old roommate was, her face drained. "You too?" she whispered. I asked what she meant. She told me my roommate had gone through 3 roommates before me. None of them lasted more than a month. One of them left campus entirely. I asked why, but she just shook her head. "Ask her yourself," she said, and walked away. That night I sat in my new dorm, replaying everything. The weight, the touch, the way my roommate's eyes had stared at something over me. I couldn't shake the memory of her prescriptions. There weren't just acne meds. I'd seen the labels: antipsychotics, mood stabilizers. The kind of medicine you give someone who hears voices, sees things that aren't there. I started to wonder if she'd been seeing something in the room all along, something I had only started to feel. The thought made me sick. 2 weeks later, I went back to grab something I'd forgotten. The room was empty. Her desk cleared. Her bed stripped. She was gone. I asked around. No one knew where she went. Some said she dropped out. Others said she was admitted somewhere. Nobody was sure, but a rumor started spreading that she wasn't the crazy one, that whatever she'd been medicating against wasn't in her head. It was in the room. Sometimes late at night in my new dorm, I swear I still feel it. The faintest dip at the corner of the mattress, the air turning colder, and I can't stop thinking about that last night, the way her eyes stared above me, not at the ceiling, not at the wall, but directly at something standing right behind me. This next story takes place in a college business building, where a student realized some doors are never meant to be open. I went to college in Ohio. It wasn't a big city school, but it was old, really old. The kind of campus where some of the buildings had been standing since the 1800s. Most people hated the business building. It wasn't just ugly. It was wrong. The ceilings were too low, the lights always flickered, and there was this faint buzzing sound in the halls like wires humming in the walls. Everyone said the basement was haunted, but honestly, the whole building felt that way. I had an evening class there twice a week. Accounting 101. The professor loved to lecture late, so we'd usually leave when it was already dark outside. One night, about a month into the semester, my professor asked me to hang back after class. Nothing bad, just some paperwork about tutoring. By the time I finished, the building was empty, or at least it should have been. As I was leaving, I noticed something strange. Down the hallway, one of the classroom doors was open. That wasn't unusual in itself, but the lights inside were off. It was just a pitch-black room with the door cracked wide like someone had left in a hurry. I slowed down. The buzzing in the wall seemed louder there, and then faintly I heard it. A shuffle inside the dark room. I froze. At first I thought it was a janitor, but the janitors always had their carts and you could hear them wheeling around. This was softer. Almost like someone walking barefoot on tile. "Hello?" I called, hating how shaky my voice sounded. No answer. I didn't stick around. I hurried out of the building and chalked it up to nerves. The next week it happened again. Class ended, everyone left, and as I was heading out I saw it. Same door, same pitch-black classroom, open. And this time I heard breathing. Not the normal kind. Not like someone just sitting in a chair. It was this deep, uneven inhale, wet-sounding, ragged. I felt the hairs rise on the back of my neck. I forced myself to glance inside. The room was empty. Just rows of desks, but the air was colder in there, and the buzzing in the walls seemed to stop completely, like the whole building was holding its breath. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the sound in my head. The breathing. I told myself it had to be another student messing around, or maybe I'd imagined it, but deep down I didn't believe that. 2 weeks later, my professor asked me to stay again. By then I was dreading it. The halls were darker than usual that night. Half the ceiling lights were out, so the whole place looked like it was swallowing itself. When I turned the corner, I saw it. Not just an open door this time. There was a figure standing inside the classroom. I only saw it for a second because it stepped back the moment my eyes landed on it. Like it had been waiting for me, I bolted. Didn't care if I looked crazy. I ran all the way to my dorm and locked the door behind me. The next class, I avoided the hall completely. I left through the back stairwell, even though it added 10 minutes to my walk. But word started spreading among my classmates. One girl swore she heard someone whisper her name when she was alone in the building. Another guy said he saw a handprint on the inside of the glass door one morning before the building even opened. And everyone mentioned the same thing. That open classroom. Always dark, always waiting. I finally told one of the seniors about it, hoping he'd laugh and tell me it was some dumb tradition. But he didn't laugh. He just nodded like he already knew. Then he said something that stuck with me since. They say someone hung themselves in that room in the 80s. A professor. Nobody liked to talk about it. But the school never got rid of the room. They just keep it locked now. I asked him what he meant. Locked. The door I'd been seeing was never supposed to be open. I didn't believe him at first, so after my next night class I went back. The door was open as usual, dark as a cave inside. But when I looked closer, I realized something that made my stomach drop. The lock on the door was still latched. On the outside, that meant the door wasn't open. It couldn't be, but it was. I don't go near that hall anymore. Even in the daytime, I take the long way around. But sometimes when I leave the building at night, I swear I hear it behind me. That heavy, uneven breathing, following me all the way down the hall. And sometimes, when I pass the business building on my way across campus, I'll glance up at the second floor. There's always one window that looks darker than the rest. And every now and then, I swear, I see a shape standing just behind the glass. This next story takes place in a college business building, where a student realized some doors are never meant to be open. My college was in a small town surrounded by woods, the kind of place where the only nightlife was at the bars on Main Street. And if you didn't drink, there wasn't much else to do. Most students walked everywhere, but there was one shortcut people used to get from the dorms to the other side of campus. It was a dirt path that cut straight through a patch of forest. Everyone called it the trail. During the day, it was fine. But at night, no one liked walking it alone. One Friday, I had stayed late in the library. It was around 1:30 in the morning when I finally packed up my stuff. The main road back to the dorms was well lit, but it took 20 minutes. The trail only took 10. I knew it was dumb, but I was tired and I just wanted to get back to my room. So I took the shortcut. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. Even in the middle of the night, you'd usually hear crickets or an owl or something. But that night, the air was completely still. Just the crunch of my own footsteps on the dirt. Halfway down the trail, I noticed a sound behind me. Faint but steady. Footsteps. I froze. The sound stopped too. I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe it was just an echo. But when I started walking again, so did the other steps. I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to know who or what was behind me. But my curiosity got the better of me. I turned my head. At first, I thought the trail was empty. But then I saw him, a man, standing completely still about 30 feet back. He wasn't wearing student clothes. No hoodie, no backpack. Just a dark jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. Around his neck, I saw something glint in the faint moonlight. A lanyard. The kind campus security wore. I felt a wave of relief at first. If he was security, maybe he was just making rounds, but then I realized something. Campus security didn't patrol the woods. They had no reason to be out there at all. I quickened my pace. The footsteps followed. Every time I sped up, he sped up. Every time I slowed, he slowed. He never said a word. I could see the end of the trail up ahead, the glow of the streetlights at the edge of campus. I broke into a jog, so did he. That's when panic set in. I sprinted the rest of the way out of the woods, heart pounding, lungs burning. When I burst out onto the sidewalk, I whipped around. The trail was empty. The man was gone. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just another student messing with me, but deep down I didn't believe it because I'd seen his face, or rather I hadn't. Even when the moonlight hit him, his face was hidden in shadow, like it just wasn't there. A few days later, I overheard two girls in the dining hall talking. They were whispering about some guy who had followed one of their friends at night. Tall, dark jacket, baseball cap, one of them said, and a lanyard around his neck. My stomach dropped. Over the next couple of weeks, more stories started spreading. A sophomore swore he saw the man standing outside his dorm one night, just staring up at the windows. Another girl said she woke up to the sound of footsteps pacing outside her ground floor room, and when she peeked out, she saw the glint of a lanyard. No one ever saw him up close. No one ever heard him speak, but everyone described the same thing. The man who shouldn't be there. The man with the lanyard. I avoided the trail after that. Even during the day, I stuck to the longer route. But the fear never really left me. Every time I walked across campus at night, I felt watched. Every creak, every shuffle of leaves, I thought it was him. And sometimes I'd catch glimpses. A figure by the trees. A flash of silver at the edge of the parking lot. Always gone when I looked twice. One night I was up late in my dorm room scrolling on my phone. Around 3 a.m. I heard it. Footsteps. Right outside my door. Slow. Deliberate. Back and forth. Back and forth. I held my breath, praying it was just someone heading to the bathroom. But the steps didn't fade. They lingered. Pacing. I finally worked up the courage to look through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The next morning, I barely got any sleep. I stumbled to class, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. But when I got back to my dorm, I saw something on the floor in front of my door, a plastic ID badge. The kind that hangs from a lanyard. but the picture was scratched out. The name was illegible, just a blank smile of static where the face should have been. I never reported it. Who would believe me? And honestly, I didn't want campus security to get involved, because if he really was one of them, what would that mean? Now I've graduated. I live in a different city, different apartment, different life. But sometimes when I'm walking home late at night, I hear it again. That steady crunch of footsteps just behind me. Matching mine. Waiting for me to turn. And every now and then, when I catch my reflection in a dark window, I swear, I see the glint of a lanyard around my own neck. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just another student messing with me, but deep down I didn't believe it because I'd seen his face, or rather I hadn't. Even when the moonlight hit him, his face was hidden in shadow, like it just wasn't there. A few days later, I overheard two girls in the dining hall talking. They were whispering about some guy who had followed one of their friends at night. Tall, dark jacket, baseball cap, one of them said, and a lanyard around his neck. My stomach dropped. Over the next couple of weeks, more stories started spreading. A sophomore swore he saw the man standing outside his dorm one night, just staring up at the windows. Another girl said she woke up to the sound of footsteps pacing outside her ground floor room, and when she peeked out, she saw the glint of a lanyard. No one ever saw him up close. No one ever heard him speak, but everyone described the same thing. The man who shouldn't be there. The man with the lanyard. I avoided the trail after that. Even during the day, I stuck to the longer route. But the fear never really left me. Every time I walked across campus at night, I felt watched. Every creak, every shuffle of leaves, I thought it was him. And sometimes I'd catch glimpses. A figure by the trees. A flash of silver at the edge of the parking lot. Always gone when I looked twice. One night I was up late in my dorm room scrolling on my phone. Around 3 a.m. I heard it. Footsteps. Right outside my door. Slow. Deliberate. Back and forth. Back and forth. I held my breath, praying it was just someone heading to the bathroom. But the steps didn't fade. They lingered. Pacing. I finally worked up the courage to look through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The next morning, I barely got any sleep. I stumbled to class, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. But when I got back to my dorm, I saw something on the floor in front of my door. A plastic ID badge. The kind that hangs from a lanyard. But the picture was scratched out. The name was illegible, just a blank smile of static where the face should have been. I never reported it. Who would believe me? And honestly, I didn't want campus security to get involved, because if he really was one of them, what would that mean? Now I've graduated. I live in a different city, different apartment, different life. But sometimes when I'm walking home late at night, I hear it again. That steady crunch of footsteps just behind me. Matching mine. Waiting for me to turn. And every now and then, when I catch my reflection in a dark window, I swear, I see the glint of a lanyard around my own neck. This final story takes place in a high school gym, where staying late after practice led to something far more terrifying than an empty court. My old high school had one of those big gyms that always felt too empty at night. Polished wood floors, high ceiling with buzzing fluorescent lights. Even during practice, it echoed so much you could hear your own footsteps follow you. I was on the basketball team my junior year, and because of scheduling, we sometimes had practice late. I mean really late, sometimes not finishing until 10:30 or 11 p.m. Most of the team would leave together, but I usually stayed behind to shoot around. It helped me clear my head. One night I stayed longer than usual. Coach had already left. The janitor gave me a nod as he finished mopping the locker room, then headed out the back doors. By 11:30, it was just me and the sound of the ball bouncing, the squeak of my sneakers, and the hum of the lights overhead. That's when I noticed something strange. On the far side of the bleachers, up in the shadows, I saw movement. Just the faintest shift, like someone standing between the rows. I froze with the ball in my hands. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing through the gym. No answer. I waited, staring, but nothing moved again. I told myself I was imagining it, packed up my stuff, headed for the exit, but just as I reached the doors, I swore I heard it. A soft laugh, high-pitched, almost playful. Coming from the bleachers. The next night, I told a teammate. He shrugged it off. Probably the janitor. But I knew it wasn't. The janitor was an older guy, always grumpy, barely said a word. That laugh, it didn't sound like him. It didn't sound like any adult. It sounded like a kid. A week later, after another late practice, I stayed again. This time, I kept glancing at the bleachers. For the first half hour, nothing happened. Just me and the ball, but then, when I went to grab a rebound, I saw it. A face. Just barely visible between the seats. Too pale. Eyes too wide. Grinning. By the time I blinked, it was gone. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the bounce of the basketball in my head. And that laugh. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed I was in the gym again. Empty, silent. The lights buzzing overhead. And from the far corner, that same pale face peeking out at me. Grinning wider. Whispering something I couldn't make out. I woke up drenched in sweat. I told myself I wouldn't stay late anymore. But a few days later, I was the last one out again. Habit. I was packing my bag when I heard it. The sound of footsteps on the bleachers, slow, deliberate, up, down. Up, down, who's there? I called. My voice cracked this time, no response, then that laugh again, closer. I bolted for the exit, not even looking back. The heavy gym doors slammed shut behind me, echoing down the hallway. As I hurried past the trophy case, I caught my reflection in the glass. And for a split second, there was another face standing right behind mine. White, grinning. When I spun around, the hallway was empty. After that, I refused to stay behind anymore. If Coach asked me, I made excuses. But the weirdest part? A couple of weeks later, the janitor quit. He didn't give notice. Just stopped showing up. Someone said he told the principal he wouldn't clean that gym at night anymore. No explanation. Nothing. Now I've been out of high school for years. I live in another state, haven't set foot in that building since graduation. But every so often, late at night, I wake up to the sound of a basketball bouncing, soft, steady, somewhere in the darkness of my apartment, and sometimes, just sometimes, I swear I hear that laugh again, high, childlike, right outside my bedroom door. That's going to do it for these 4 stories. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more true horror stories. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.